Welcome to The Explainer. Have you ever been right in the middle of a deeply personal struggle and you catch yourself quietly thinking, man, maybe my faith just isn't working? You look around and everybody else seems to be having these flashy, life-altering miracles, but for you, absolute, deafening silence. Well, today we're unpacking some fascinating source material that hits the nail on the head regarding this exact feeling. We are going to explore what faith actually looks like when the skies don't open up. And we're doing it by looking at one of the absolute most remarkable stories of resilience and silent endurance ever recorded. Okay, let's dive into this because this right here is the incredibly vulnerable hook from our source material. The speaker just straight up admits to feeling deeply inadequate. They're looking at their life, trying to figure out why they haven't had some incredible, mind-blowing supernatural encounter. There are no visions, no booming voices from the heavens, and honestly, it leads to this agonizing question. Is there something wrong with me? Am I somehow less than? And honestly, you can totally see why they feel that way. I mean, we live in a really noisy culture. As the source points out, you constantly hear these modern claims from pastors and believers talking about seeing angels, having dramatic visions, hearing audible voices, the whole shebang. But the silent reality for so many folks, it's entirely different. They are just desperately searching for peace. They aren't even asking to see the supernatural. They just want that quiet assurance that they are going to be okay. So how on earth do we reconcile this? Where do we actually look for a model of faith in the dark? To answer that, our source points us to the ultimate case study from the book of Genesis, Joseph. Now, hold on. We aren't looking at Joseph as some distant, unrelatable historical figure stuck in a dusty old book. Not at all. The source frames him as the perfect mirror for our modern struggles. He is literally the ultimate example of what deep, unwavering faith looks like when God is completely and utterly silent. Just consider the timeline of Joseph's silent hardship for a second. At age 17, he gets sold into slavery by his own brothers. And he doesn't catch a single break until he's 30, when he interprets Pharaoh's dream. I want you to really think about that massive, brutal gap of time. We're talking 13 of his most foundational years. These are the years when people today are graduating, getting their driver's licenses, stepping into adulthood. But Joseph, he's rotting in slavery in prison. And here is the absolute kicker from the source material. During all those years, there is zero recorded supernatural comfort. No angel comes down to his cell to say, hey, hold on, Joseph. Just pure, unadulterated silence. Now, what's really interesting about this relentless cycle of injustice is that it wasn't just one bad day. It's like a giant puzzle of awful luck. First, he's sold by jealous brothers who literally fake his death using his bloody coat of many colors. Second, he actually does the right thing, refuses the advances of his master Potiphar's wife, and she falsely accuses him of assault, tragically using his abandoned outer cloak as fake evidence. Think about that. 2 betrayals, 2 incidents weaponizing his clothes throwing. And third, he gets thrown in prison, manages to help the royal butler by interpreting his dream, and just begs the guy to remember him. The butler gets out and completely forgets him. Which brings us to a massive number. 2. As in 2 full years. That is exactly how long Joseph was left to rot in that prison after successfully helping the butler. He wasn't just sitting there for a few weeks. It was 2 full years of agonizing waiting after he thought his golden ticket out had finally arrived. As the source material asks with this incredible, raw emotion, which God leaves you to suffer like this? Seriously, how do you not entirely lose your mind or your faith in that level of isolation? The source actually highlights a profound theological irony here by comparing Joseph to his father, Jacob. It's kind of a fascinating tale of 2 believers. See, Jacob was constantly fearful. He was terrified of his brother Esau, afraid of retaliation, just chronically afraid of everything. And because of that, God constantly had to speak to him, comforting him and repeatedly telling him not to fear. But Joseph, the son, there's absolutely no recorded fear and 0 recorded supernatural comfort. He endured horrific trauma, relying purely on the inherited knowledge of a God he hadn't even heard from himself. Wild, right? Yet despite all that deafening silence, the text just keeps repeating this powerful phrase, the Lord was with Joseph. And the source points out something totally amazing here. Non-believers, like his master Potiphar and the captain of the prison guard, literally handed complete, unchecked control over to Joseph. Why would they do that? Because everything Joseph touched just prospered. It was undeniable. They didn't need to hear Joseph preach a sermon. They just looked at his life, saw his absolute rock-solid integrity, and implicitly trusted him with everything they owned. Which brings up a really challenging question for all of us digging into this explainer today. How do people see your light without a miracle?
The source asks us, how do we pattern our own behavior so that people implicitly trust us? How do we live with such obvious integrity and excellence that people actually want to hand us responsibility? And do it without us needing to blow our own horn, demand influence, or rely on some supernatural flex to prove our worth?
Well, Joseph achieved this through wisdom. And the source defines wisdom beautifully here. It's practical ideas and discernment utilized in the complete absence of divine instructions. When Joseph was finally brought before Pharaoh at age 30, he didn't just interpret a dream about an upcoming famine. No, he presented a brilliant, incredibly practical economic plan to save the entire country. Pharaoh didn't make him prime minister because he performed a miracle. He made him prime minister because of his undeniable wisdom. And that brings us right to the climax of the narrative, the ultimate test at age 32. Joseph is now the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. The famine has officially hit, and walking right into his royal court, literally begging for food, are his brothers. The exact same men who threw him in a pit and stole his youth are suddenly standing right in front of him, entirely 100% at his mercy. When Joseph finally reveals his true identity to them, he drops this incredibly famous quote, "What you meant for evil, God turned around for good." The source really emphasizes how Joseph completely reframed his entire trauma here. He didn't just view their betrayal as some heinous crime that required severe, immediate punishment. Instead, he chose to view it as divine interference. He realized he was actually sent there ahead of them to ensure there would be food to save his family's lives. And this brilliantly illustrates the absolute shock of the explainer today. There's no blame game, no forced accountability. The source material practically pauses right here in total disbelief. Just think about it for a second. Joseph had every right in the world to destroy them, or at the very least, make them get down and grovel. But there is a staggering absence of any demand for an apology or repentance. He just offers them absolute, immediate absolution. Now, let's be honest with ourselves. This goes entirely against our human nature. If it were us, the source readily admits, our burning desire for vindication would demand a few things right off the bat. First, you need to acknowledge the hurt you caused me. Second, you need to understand the gravity of the youth and the years you literally stole from me. Third, you need to apologize, and it better be sincere. And fourth, you need to take full accountability. We just desperately want the people who hurt us to feel the heavy, crushing weight of our pain. But Joseph, he chose comfort over vengeance. And this is perhaps the most staggering detail of the whole story. Joseph didn't just let them off the hook. He actively comforted his abusers. He loaded them up with chariots and food to bring their father back. And get this, as they left, he actually told them not to argue amongst themselves on the way home. He completely shielded the very people who ruined his youth from feeling any shame or guilt. It's just wild. So, the crucial point is, how do you really react when you are hurt? The source uses this ancient story as a mirror to pivot right back to our own internal struggles. When someone wrongs you or attacks your reputation or sets you back in life, what is your immediate reflex? Are you genuinely seeking a restorative peace, or are you aggressively seeking vindication? This leads to an incredibly vulnerable realization about the true root of holding grudges. We so often mask our demands for apologies as a noble pursuit of justice. But the source asks us to truly, honestly compare faith and fear here. True faith means letting go of your reputation and trusting God's overarching plan. But fear is the absolute terror of being diminished by others. If we constantly demand that someone takes accountability, we have to ask, is it really righteous faith, or is it just our fragile ego terrified of being minimalized and disrespected? To truly embrace this level of forgiveness, it really requires stripping the heart bare. The source summarizes the ultimate takeaways from Joseph's silent hardship into a few key steps. It means making yourself of no reputation. It means completely abandoning the fear of being diminished by others, trusting an internal transformation over your external circumstances, and finally, choosing obedience and peace over that desperate, burning need for vindication. True boldness and faith, it turns out, might just simply mean giving up your absolute right to be proven right. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final provocative thought. The very next time you face silence or injustice or just deep, deep hurt, I want you to look closely at your own response. Is your reaction truly based on faith, or is it secretly driven by the fear of being diminished? Take a moment to really linger on that. Honestly, it might just change how you view your entire journey. Thanks for exploring this with us.